Hey, everybody, I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland. This is my microphone coming back here because I forgot because I do a lot of typing. Um, Aaron, welcome. Thank you. Always good to see you.
Always a pleasure, Frank.
And always look forward to the road you're going to put me on and travel alongside you. And it is an adventure, folks, in Canadian interest when it comes to sports. We don't stop at teams that in Canadian cities. We don't stop at athletes that fight specifically for Canada. We do everything that has to do with Canada sports, and it has something to do with Canada, maybe at arm's length, even depending on how important we think it is to talk about, based on being proud Canadians, which we are, and perfect. I think we're perfect supporters of Canadian sports, and this is just our way of showing it.
Spot on, Frank, as always.
Okay, here we go. Uh, Jack Campbell, the soup guy, um, is transitioning. Tell us about it.
Well, it's just so our viewers aren't confused. He's transitioning to a new phase in his career. Uh, he has officially announced his retirement from the NHL and is transitioning into a new career as a life coach. He posted it on his Insta on Sunday to reflect on his journey that took him from a highly touted first round pick to an NHL All Star and eventually to a place where stepping away from the crease felt like the right decision. The tone
Timing.
was measured and grateful rather than dramatic. He spoke about closing one book and beginning another, emphasizing growth, perspective, and a desire to move forward with purpose beyond the ice as a life coach. Now, for those who don't know Jack's story, he was originally drafted by the Stars in 2010. Um, he entered the NHLPA's Player Assistance Program in 2024 while under contract with the Detroit Red Wings. But in between, spent some time with the Leafs. Opened the year 2020-2021 with an 11-0-0 record, setting a franchise mark for the most consecutive wins by a goaltender to start a season. He appeared in the ASG and posted 31 wins in 49 appearances. But after signing a 5-year, $25 million contract with the Edmonton Oilers, that's where things sort of came unglued. After a rough first season and limited action the next year, the Oilers bought out the remaining 3 years of his contract in June 2024. He signed a 1-year deal with Detroit and spent the majority of his time with the Grand Rapids Griffins of the AHL. Now he's taken the opportunity to take a step forward, change his career, and I think his post was very well thought out, very well balanced.
Absolutely good for him. Best of luck to him. Hockey players and athletes both develop a kind of, I'm going to call it a kind of high in being in sports, being an athlete, the pressure, the competition because of the level that it's at is very, very life consuming. So it can affect you adversely. Now, what does he have that I know that could make him a life coach? Well, what I have and that I know about him is that the most important thing is he's had um, the I'll call it the good fortune to have dealt with some of those troubling things that happen in life without highlighting them, just saying that there's challenges in life and coming back from those challenges takes work, takes an understanding, takes a belief in yourself that may not be clearly evident to you at the time. So what I say is this, is that anybody who's been through it that can help people to understand or assist them in figuring something out that they get to a place where they need to get to the other side. It's always good to talk to somebody who's made the same journey. And that's what I'll say about that. And it's always good. I've benefited from people with experience in situations that I have found myself. And I think, Aaron, if I asked you that question, you could say probably the same thing.
I certainly could. And his experiences and his connection with fans in Toronto will only serve him in good stead because as a professional athlete, sorry, he's been through a lot of the same sort of things that you and I have been through:
Right.
stroke, depression, imposter syndrome, all that sort of thing. I think he's rather uniquely positioned in all of this to help people going forward. So I'm very much looking forward to how the next progression in his life goes.
And what I assume, and I don't know, I won't pretend to know, is that it's an opportunity for one human being who has benefited from life in a lot of ways. Yes, had deficiencies in that life that might be just giving back, because it's not like you're going to become a millionaire becoming a life coach. I mean, if he's going to be a coach, I would think that he could make more money being a goalie coach. I'm just saying. I'm just putting that out there.
It's a possibility.
Right. So good for him for figuring out what to do after life as an athlete. Good for him. How much action are the Core Marlies ready for this upcoming season?
Well, in particular, we're looking at guys that had a very large role in their recent run to the Calder Cup. Specifically, we were looking at Quillen, Murmas, Hildeby, and Grew, who all featured very heavily in the Maple Leafs plans last year. Quillen played the most. He appeared in 23 games and had a goal and 2 assists. Then there was Hildeby, who played 20 games in relief due to the absences of Wool and Stolars. Then there was Grew, who was introduced late in the campaign, making his season debut on March 10th and playing 13 games for the club. And Dakota Murmas, who was an injury replacement throughout the year, playing 11 games for the Leafs all before December 9th, before he was taken out. Now, the obvious here is Hildeby's obviously gone. Wool was shipped to the Flyers, Hildeby to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the role that Hildeby plays in all of this is he brought us Sergei Bobrovsky. So that's a decent thing. But at the same time, Arturs Akhtiamov could potentially get a stint in the NHL if Stolars or Bobrovsky can't perform up to the expectations, which is based on both of their injury history entirely possible. Ad Tanev's return to the lineup, along with the addition of Radish and Emil Andre in the back end of this offseason. There's also Troy Stetcher, who was signed to a 2-year deal, and even Philippe Myers is still a depth piece within the organization. That leaves scraps for players like William Villeneuve, who just signed a new 2-year deal and who could potentially be on the way out. Not to mention Ben Danford, who has said that he'd want multiple times to crack the lineup. Certainly, though, with Chaika coming up and Gruden as the assistant coach, there is the very realistic possibility that what with Gruden's experience with these boys, you may see Marlies taking on a more prominent role than first expected.
I'm of the view that I believe that motivation is a very important factor when it comes to success in professional sports. Motivation is not just within yourself. It's also wanting to maintain your position within the team and not losing it. The better the players are in line behind you, not on the team, that could displace you, is a bit of a motivator. So it's that. And then you talked about Gruden. As much as he knows his players there, they're both in Toronto, but in the Marlies, there's the opportunity for him to know the best and the worst of those players. And that makes a more accurate decision on his part. If there's failings in his lineup, his NHL lineup, he can make a calculated guess, and it's calculated because of the experience he's been around, to bring somebody up and give them a chance who may, and as you know, in sports, in every team, there's a thing they call roles. They're not the things you put butter on. There's something else. So that opportunity for him is good on all counts. And that means the players that are on the NHL team, the better the players are behind them, the better they better be. Because I think the biggest problem we've had here in Toronto, and I don't know, Aaron, if you agree with this, is the comfort level of the players on the team, I think, has been a little excessive, a little too much. There needs to be more of footsteps being heard, and I think it would benefit the team. Now, that's not to say create doubt in players. I just mean that just the simple fact that you got to play well, you got to be smart, you got to be working hard and doing your job and always performing to your responsibility, that you don't lay back thinking, not that they do, but they could, that there's nobody pushing them anyway. They're locked into what they're doing. There's no relationship between them being on the team, their behavior, and whether they can be replaced or not.
Yeah, there's always that issue when it comes to comfort level, right? You'll get players that react in certain ways because, hey, I've got a no movement clause. I've got a one-way contract. What are they going to do? Sit me? And there needs to be a little more.
They are?
Yeah, exactly. There needs to be more of that in the ranks, man.
Yeah.
Legitimately, there does. So I can certainly see the boys from the farm team making a little bit of noise when it comes right down to it.
We have heard from the experts. We have heard from people in the business who say that coaches today have very few strings or tools that they can use or pull. But one is ice time. And that's what we're talking about here. It's players looking for ice time. Justifying your ice time is an important consideration. And the lack of how shall I put this? The lack of real concern that there's somebody that could play your position is a problem. But it is incumbent upon the coach and management not to do it in a way that side rails the number one goal of every organization. And this has to be the number one goal. And that everybody in that organization is pulling on the rope in the same direction. Individual concerns, there's a fine line, in other words, that I'm saying that could be crossed in the situation we're referring to. But at least it's easier to pull a horse back than it is to make them go forward. So fun is what fun is. Let's talk about the NBA, WNBA, that is. The Toronto Tempo has a coach now who's a little lighter in the pocket. What happened, Aaron?
So during their most recent 111-92 loss to the Atlanta Dream, broadcast cameras picked up Sandy Brondello addressing the officials after Nyara Sabally went down with an injury after contact with Angel Reese. Sabally was called for a foul, and Brondello could be heard saying that Reese was a protected species. Now,
ouch.
People chose to interpret that as racist because Brondello is white and Angel Reese is not, as is Nyara Sabally. Brondello came right out and said, "Look, Angel, I'm sorry. Last night, in the emotion of the moment after Nyara Sabaly's injury, I used a phrase that I shouldn't have used, and I take full responsibility for that. My frustration was with the officiating, but my words unfairly put the focus on you. I understand that my words carry an impact beyond what is intended, particularly for Black women in our league, and I'm deeply sorry for that. I've spent my career competing with, coaching, and learning from incredible Black women. I regret that my words caused hurt to a community I respect so deeply. I have a lot of respect for you, Angel, as both a player and a person, and I sincerely apologize to you, your teammates, and the Dream organization for my comment." This phrase, if somebody's a protected species, is a phrase that's commonly used in Australian sports to express frustration for a lack of calls against a certain player. It's the same way as saying, well, so-and-so doesn't get calls because he's a referee's favorite. Or in the NHL's case, he signed sticks like Brad for these guys. In the U.S., however, the phrase has been used to suggest that someone isn't human and could have been seen as derogatory towards Black people. And again, this is not because Brondello is inherently racist. She's not. But it's, I think, a lack of familiarity with the terms that are bandied about in these leagues and in certain societies that she needs to make herself better aware of, so something like this doesn't happen again. But they're down a coach for a game.
Hello, human being.
Right. Yeah, seriously.
Hello, political spin. Welcome together. At the end of the day, I think that's what Aaron's suggesting, and I totally agree with him. At the end of the day, what this comes down to is I don't think an individual said something with the intention with the way it landed.
No.
I sit in the position that I do not. I agree with Aaron, where you can't really punish somebody for saying whether you do, whether you don't. I'm not saying I will support either. I'm just saying I can understand the difficulty in punishing somebody who's saying something that, by extrapolation, by by interpretation, is thought to be another thing. And I agree with Aaron, and it is not outside sport that certain players, male, female, any sport, are protected species. Basketball has a reputation for that very interpretation of your term, which is, there's the whistle counts differently depending on who the person is that's being judged, or judged to be fouling, or the person who's being fouled. We saw this with Argentina in the World Cup. There was a lot of talk about how Argentina was getting all these breaks and stuff, right? Well, they didn't in the last game, that's for sure. They got a red card, and that red card wasn't as flagrant as a red card could be. It crossed the line, no doubt about it. It crossed the line, but it didn't look like something that's always a red card, and sometimes something that may have been a yellow card, and not even a yellow card for that matter, when I saw the replay. But that's neither here or there. The bottom line here, the point is that we need to understand the effect of what we say. Unfortunately, in many cases, we don't understand the pain or the hurt it causes until it lands. So from that moment on, you learn something. You don't say anything like that again. You try to learn from the moment and correct your mistake, because we all make mistakes. It's not that we make the mistakes that's the problem with people. It's the fact that we make them and don't correct them. So that's where we stand today. Will it be corrected? Is this going to become part of a trend, or is this something, a one-off, which I think it will be, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail. And I do know she accepted the apology very gracefully as well. I saw her accept the apology, so I think everybody's ready for what I'll call a reset.
Yeah, and in this case, it is a one game suspension, but I believe the Toronto's coaching staff will be able to make it in her absence. And as you mentioned, the one thing that we keep looking forward to is not that the mistake was made in the first place, but that it doesn't happen again.
That's it.
And there's a lot of nuance that goes in with these sorts of things. So
that's we just live in a world today where wrong is made of nothing. And also wrong is made of something. But sometimes the two are traveling on the same track, but aren't the same track. So it is what it is. It's been identified. I think the league did the right thing in making it a serious offense. The suspension is warranted. It'll be lived out, and hopefully a lesson will be learned. Let's go to the NBA, the other one without the W. So Leonard and the trade might change. And I think the only thing that might change in the trade, you tell me, will be draft picks. That is all I could see would be a change.
Yeah, as it currently stands, for this player that's currently under investigation, they're sending Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, and 2 first-round picks. But they also know that Leonard is limited in that he probably won't play all 82 games. So they could reasonably insist upon removing, say, a first-rounder from the deal, which mean that things might get pushed around and changed a little bit. In particular, they might ask for a roster player to come back. This is just definitely something that they're currently looking into. If I can actually just step away for a second here, Frank, I will be right back. Okay.
Okay. I'll continue on Aaron's course, and essentially, either a draft pick disappears or a roster player comes over. But one thing you can be guaranteed, that is the players that have already been told they're moving, they will not move anymore. Dick is going, Ingram's going. It's just a question now how they adjust the deal without impacting on the players who have already been told that they're leaving. And if there's an adjustment made, and let's say the Raptors, due to what they've learned, are standing firm on the fact that they shouldn't give away as much as they're giving, dependent on the situation. In other words, they shouldn't be punished because they didn't know this raw deal or this contravention of what's supposed to happen didn't happen. And that's where we sit, I think, today on that issue. Let's talk about the Raptors, and should they avoid the DeMar DeRozan return? Should they avoid that?
Look, DeRozan's still a good player. Okay, his production in recent years has occasionally been overlooked because he's been playing for, let's not beat around the bush here, a not so good team, specifically the Sacramento Kings. But during 25-26, he had 18.4 points per game while shooting 49.7% from the field and 32% from beyond the arc. He's averaging 4.1 assists, 2.9 rebounds, and 1 steal per game. He's going to help any offense he joins. Here's the thing. They already have a respectable scoring attack. Now, while they were just 21st in points per game, Toronto was 7th in field goal percentage. They would benefit more from three-point shooting, but DeRozan's go-to is a mid-range jumper. So while his numbers are good and there's familiarity with the fans and people love him and all that, he doesn't necessarily fit what they're looking for. What they need is a 3-and-D winger. DeRozan is not a fit, I don't think, for them. So realistically speaking, he could help, but he's not quite the piece that they need.
The good of that would be to know that if this team could win another championship and DeRozan comes back to the team, it would be, it would be pleasant and it would be a nice story, right? But for now, and probably in the future, it's only a story. It's not reality. It's wishful thinking. And I agree with you 100%. There are specific needs because of now that they have two really good players that can play defense. They have two really good players that can play defense. It's a necessity, and I agree with you. It's their three-point shooting, and I've watched them all season. The Raptors have failed in that regard, unable to make the three-point shots. And the fact that three-point shots are not strong enough, like everything in sports, there's yin and yang. So the yin is if you make the 3 points, the yang is under the basket becomes a little less crowded. So, one thing leads to another. And that's why I agree with you, Aaron. That's what they need to do. They need to make their short game, if I can use that term, more effective by their long game being more effective. So it is what it is, I guess. Let's talk about the Blue Jays and contracts.
Yeah, so the Blue Jays are finding themselves in an unenviable situation here. They struck out only 6 times in their 3-0 loss to the Chicago White Sox on Sunday. In theory, that's usually a recipe for building a productive offense. The problem is that game managed to expose the biggest issue that's currently facing Toronto's lineup. Only 4 of Toronto's 17 balls in play left the bat at 95 miles an hour or harder, allowing Chicago to control the game from start to finish. They were getting wood on it, but it wasn't enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not an isolated event either. The Blue Jays, over the past month, the Blue Jays have posted the 5th lowest strikeout rate in Major League Baseball at 19.8%. But despite that, they rank 28th in Team WRC+, showing that the issue is not the amount of contact they're making, but the quality of that contact. They put the ball in play more often than most teams, but very few of those contacts actually changed what's going on the scoreboard. Vladdy's still struggling. He posted a 21.1 strikeout rate and a 9.5% walk rate. The problem has really been the disappearance of his power. Same thing goes with Ernie Clement. He's got an 0.78 ISO and 377 slugging percentage. The only other person that's doing something similar is Kazuma Okamoto, who's tied Shohei Ohtani's record for home runs as a Japanese rookie. The problem is that they do make contact, but there's not enough power in that contact to get them where they need to be. So that's a little bit concerning.
I'll put it much simpler. One of my favorite managers in baseball was Earl the Bum Weaver. And his favorite saying was, and his biggest contribution to what makes a winning team in his mind was the 3-run home run. And everything you just said, Aaron, comes down to the fact that the Jays don't hit enough 3-run home runs. You know how many hits you need to make in succession before you get 3 outs to get 3 runs, Aaron? If you can do a 3-run home run, if you can do a 3-run home run, you could have them. We've seen the Jays not score in an inning that they've had 6 or 7 hits, right? And not score, when, a swing of the bat could get you 3 runs. And you said it, Vladdy's power has disappeared. As a team, Okamoto is really the guy that has added home runs that maybe makes people forget that the Jays are homerless too often. And, we're all dazzled by his ability to hit home runs. So good for him, but unfortunately he needs some help with other players hitting home runs.
Yeah, that's definitely a large part of the fact that we're not getting the numbers when we need them. So,
yeah, you can't play defense against a home run. It all comes down to that. Home run is defenseless. Okay, let's talk about this oddity. Now, help me understand. Dwayne Ward died in Toronto?
Yes.
He died after he arrived here for the Joe Carter statue unveiling.
Yeah, he apparently arrived in Toronto on Friday.
Wow.
With several former teammates from the 92-93 championship teams, but was absent from Saturday's pregame ceremony celebrating those victories with the statue unveiling of Joe Carter. And, before the game on Sunday, the Blue Jays paid tribute to him with a scoreboard montage and a brief moment of silence. They have not said anything about the circumstances surrounding Dwayne's death. They did say that he had died of natural causes, but refused to elaborate any further. This was a guy that had appeared in 452 games for Toronto between 86 and 95. He had 121 career saves, which is the second most in franchise history behind Tom Henke's 217. It seems weird, that he would fly in on the Saturday, miss the ceremony flying on the Friday, miss the ceremony on the Saturday, and be gone by Sunday. So it's a strange situation. My heart goes out to the Ward family.
And
they really do.
And my heart goes out to the Ward family that it had to happen like that.
Yeah.
That they're nowhere near him when it happens. That had to be horrible. We all feel sad about him. Not only is a great player that Toronto fans adored because they did and depended on it for that matter. It's the circumstances, and we keep from time to time get reminded that these athletes are people and they are connected to a lot of other people. So my condolences to him, his family, his friends, his teammates, and everybody who loved him and interacted with him. It's too bad. I always felt safe when he got on the mound. I got to tell you, he's one of those guys that, oh, good, he's on the mound. We got a shot here for sure now.
Yeah, I don't feel nearly as bad whenever he stepped up to the mound.
We still from time to time miss that. Let's talk about the CFL, and let's talk about Drew Brown, who led the Bombers against the Red Blacks, his former team that he was traded to a mere 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah, 17-point fourth quarter deficit, and he managed to put together some incredible scoring drives. They sealed the victory in OT. Managed to win it 36-34 over the Red Blacks at TD Place Stadium. Neither offense was really able to find a lot of rhythm. As the game basically opened as a field position battle, Winnipeg and Ottawa combined for 88 yards in the first quarter, and Brett Lowther and Sergio Castillo would kick as the two teams stayed deadlocked into the second quarter. The Red Blacks got some points on the board before halftime with just 50 seconds to work with. Mayer got 3 straight passes for 69 yards before Major Williams was flagged for pass interference. That penalty put Ottawa at the 1, where Bison Barnes punched in the game's first touchdown, giving the Red Blacks a 19-9 lead and their first halftime edge of the season. Tells you how well Dinwiddie's been able to work things in Ottawa. They've been abysmal. But yeah, the Bombers continued to push back. Brown got a strike to Dembski to make it a 1-score game at 26-19. Brett Maher put up a season-high 344 passing yards. Greg Bell had his most productive outing as a Red Black with 65 rushing yards on 14 carries. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough.
Absolutely. We've got Montreal beating Calgary for the second straight time. Alexander wins. Montreal figures out how to win. I think that's the important thing here that we see repeatedly.
Yeah, this is their third straight win and second straight over the Stampeders. Davis Alexander made history. He set the record for the most consecutive pass attempts without an interception, passing former Saskatchewan Roughriders pivot Darian Durant. The first half was all Owls. That was basically the Travis Theus quarter. Montreal established the run early. Uh, you know, uh, Travis had a 16-yard touchdown to help Montreal get an early 8-0 lead. Uh, Calgary came out firing in the fourth. All credit to them for trying to mount a comeback, but um, they started on their own. Montreal started on their own 5 and ended up getting a touchdown, sealing the deal for Montreal despite a strong comeback attempt. It's one of those things where once they get rolling, they seem to know exactly what they're doing, and good luck stopping them.
Let's talk about the Elks and their victory over the Lions.
So the Elks actually managed to hold off the BC Lions for a 19-17 victory at Commonwealth on Friday. Nathan Rourke left the game after 2 plays due to a left shoulder injury. He was sacked by Noah Taylor on the second play of the Lions' opening drive and did not return. Chase Bryce's first pass attempt was intercepted. That set the Elks up, and it was pretty much all downhill from there. Cody Fajardo was clinical in helping move the Elks to 5-1 on the season, going 27 for 37, throwing for 282 yards and 1 touchdown.
Ty Katz led the Argos and won. And what I said about Montreal, the Argos are the opposite. They find a way to lose. And one more game where special teams lets them down.
I can't help but think that if they still had the Rouge, we might have been going to overtime. But
don't forget, Hamilton missed out on a Rouge too.
Oh, 100%.
Right. So, just because it happened earlier, that doesn't, take away the relevance.
Hovalahu's miss, unfortunately, happened at a really dramatic part of the game. I think it's why people remember it more.
It was shorter than a point after, for goodness sake. And he missed one of those too.
Yeah, I saw that.
Bitter? Do I sound bitter?
Not in the slightest. I mean, they did get 13 points in the fourth quarter. Can you imagine if they got 14? Wouldn't have had to have worried about that field goal attempt.
I totally get it. In previous games, the Argos' problem was they kept going to the bench with 3 points instead of 7. Then instead of 7, 3 points. 3 points instead of 7. In this case, there was a pretty secure 3 points would have led to a victory. And it was, it was effed up. And unfortunately, we talk about goaltenders in our hockey when we talk about hockey, Aaron. Confidence is a big deal for kickers, probably as much as goaltenders. And the reason the confidence is easily seen that they don't have is because of the dynamic that there's the ball, there's their foot, there's the failure.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you, though. It's not as easy as everybody makes it out.
No, it's not. It's not, because, and you're right. And I can support that statement by saying that he had a holder that's been working with him for under a week.
Yeah.
Now, the hold wasn't the problem if you listen to the people on air on TSN.
Yeah, I feel bad for Laram at this point, but I do know that the Argonauts did sign Lidster last week as well, sort of in anticipation of something like this.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what comes of it. I'm pretty sure Laram's going to keep his job, but at least now there's a little bit more competition for him as well.
Yeah, and now this story, which I am very, very, I'm simmering over this one. Jaden Dahlke in a car accident. Aaron, let me say this. Alcohol and drugs were found in his car. No one's saying that he was high. No one's saying that he was drunk. But they are saying he was in the wrong lane. And because of that, another innocent party who was in the right lane is no longer with us.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that something like this comes up. I don't want to prejudge. Lord knows I'm not anybody that ever should. But I would like to get all of the facts of the case here. It could be possible that he simply lost control. Um, we may never know what's actually happened. What we do know, however, is that a 30-year-old young man is dead. Um, Another person is also deceased. So it's one of those things where you know it is a tragedy on multiple fronts. Um, like I said, it'd be nice to get all of the facts, but the truth of the matter is we may never will. And I fear some people will already prejudge him for that sort of thing. Just the fact that alcohol and marijuana were found in the vehicle doesn't necessarily mean he was consuming it, but it certainly casts doubt. And that's not anything these families need at this point.
And the blood tests have to come back, and it wouldn't surprise me that in a situation like this they would pursue the facts and not only pursue them but confirm them as well. What I will say is this on this issue is, was he trying to pass another vehicle? If that were the case, that vehicle, I think, would have stopped if something happened while a car was passing him and hit another car. That person would at least stop to call 911. So if that issue comes up, then it becomes, another explanation, a knowledge of fact. But if it's like you say, and he was in the wrong lane and there was nobody else around, there are some conclusions that people can jump to, but I'm not going to jump to them. Like I said, we don't know anything. I'm just putting forward, if it was him passing a vehicle, there'll be a witness that he was trying to pass somebody. This is terrible. That's all I can say. Two innocent lives, 2 lives are gone. And now what we have is, in all honesty, we have a question of Jaden's innocence in this situation. And that's not a conclusion that's hard to come to. So that's the difficulty here. Let's talk about how software quirks are transforming F1 title cars.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the new formula is affecting drivers, especially when it comes to recharging batteries, and how much kinetic energy the recharging system actually takes out of the internal combustion engine to fuel the batteries. George Russell had an instance where he lost power, so he just got passed. And he was not happy about that. They did refuse to actually air that portion of it, but I've heard enough about the reports to say, like their embrace of electrical power for 26 means the hardware that makes up the car, that's the turbocharged engine, the tires, even the battery, only tell half of the story. There's a computer algorithm that they're using to determine performance and how much engine braking is involved in recharging the battery, how much power can be dropped, how much they can recharge. And it's not just Mercedes that's been having these sorts of issues. McLaren has become a prominent critic of how computerized decision making is affecting the results. There was a point where he couldn't even start the home race because the system refused to engage. There's another incident where a sudden spike of power to the rear wheels sent him spinning off the track on the formation lap, so he couldn't even compete. They need to fine tune this sort of thing, and it's not only Mercedes that's experiencing this or McLaren, but also Red Bull is having their teething issues as well.
So FIFA Spain's World Cup Championship, what does it say to you?
They played a very, very solid possession game, very European in style, as opposed to the flash and dash, which is typical of South American soccer. And at the end of the day, it took 120 minutes to actually settle this. Spain was very obviously the better team, but they didn't manage to score until the 106th minute to prevail against Argentina, who spent a good chunk of the game down a player as well.
I don't believe ever there was a game in the World Cup where the a team did not get a shot on goal.
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind. Argentina didn't seem to have any response to what Spain was putting down.
Absolutely,
and it's just puzzling.
And I'll say this as an elder in the soccer fan realm, European football, and also as an Italian, I can tell you that back in the day when Italy was a powerhouse, they did something in Italian what's called the catenaccio, which is basically defense first. And essentially, that's what Spain did, is they did not allow any opportunities, for Argentina, and they strictly dealt with, show us your weakness, we will exploit it, and we have the patience to wait till you make a mistake. And essentially, that whole game was played that way. They kept waiting till Argentina made a mistake. We saw some passes that, oops, so yes, Argentina didn't have the ability to penetrate the Spanish defense. Messi, his game looked a little messy, just because he couldn't do what he is so good at. And there were times when just a little bit of good fortune on their side would have ended up with a good shot and a great opportunity. And then there were the odd opportunity. There were a couple that found empty air above the crossbar. So, this is the game, Aaron. We talk about this every week in every sport. We saw it in football. We see it in hockey when we talk about the Leafs. You are given X amount of opportunities. It doesn't matter the percentage of opportunities you convert. It's the fact that you do. That's the issue.
Right? 100%.
You have to convert your chances. And we saw Argentina not only not convert, because they made that few opportunities, they couldn't create opportunities either. And that's a whole another level of concern for a team, right? Mind you, England now looks very sheepish, and I know I heard from some English fans talking about the fact, we looked a lot better than Argentina. For goodness sake, if we only would have put out offensive people instead of having 6 defenders out there after the changes.
Yeah. And I think it was, their desire to not get scored on again that sort of contributed to that whole situation.
Absolutely. The 10-man thing was difficult to overcome. Let's go to what we call our third period and the NHL hockey, at least from the Canadian-based teams. Let's start with the Sens and the new schedule.
Yeah, the new NHL schedule kind of leaves the Senators at a bit of a disadvantage. In a perfect world, every NHL game would feature 2 equally rested teams. The problem that we have here is with 32 teams in 32 busy multi-event buildings playing 84 games, it's pretty much impossible. The Senators will play back-to-back games on 14 occasions. In 11 of those games, they'll face a team that's had at least 1 full day's rest. Only Boston with 13, Buffalo with 12, and Pittsburgh with 12 will face that disadvantage more often than the Ottawa Senators next season. On the other hand, in games where the Sens are rested, they're going to be facing a tired team only 5 times. Only Toronto with 2 and Winnipeg with 3 are handed that advantage less frequently next season. That's, tired versus rested games, man. It doesn't quite seem fair. But Boston's in the same situation. Same with Buffalo, Florida. They also have difficult rest schedules there. Interesting to see.
All right, let's go to the Jets and Kevin He and his new position and how he's growing in it.
Yeah, so he's poised for a pro debut. He's coming off a terrific junior season where he had 39 goals and 38 assists for 77 points in 62 games, split between the Niagara Ice Dogs and the Flint Firebirds after being dealt mid-season. He also had 3 goals and 6 assists for 9 points in 6 games in the playoffs. Elite Prospects has him making the jump to the pro level next season, joining the Manitoba Moose, where he'll face grown men for the first time. He's known for his skating skills, which basically separates him from the pack, but he was only a 4th-round selection in the 2024 draft, so his ceiling pretty much remains unknown, but he's got a chance here to take some great strides forward, so very interested in seeing how he plays.
Am I reading this right? Here, I see Canucks fans reacting to Connor Bedard's new contract? Did Connor Bedard sign with the Canucks?
No, okay. So here's the deal. You know how you talk about contracts that walk people to free agency.
Right.
Well, Connor Bedard has signed a 5-year deal, which carries an AAV of $15 million. That means that Connor Bedard will have the third highest cap hit for the 26-27 season, while his $17 million total salary ranks fourth. Ever since Bedard was first drafted into the WHL, there was the hope that he would play in Vancouver, but they never got the draft pick that they needed to get him. However, a lot of them are hoping that we get a John Tavares style situation here in 5 years.
Oh
So
no!
they're thinking after that 5-year deal is up, he's gonna walk.
Oh no! Okay. Well, hey, look. For me, that contract is too much money. It's 100%. The kind of money that this is exactly this description of this contract and how it fits into his future is exactly what Austin Matthews signed. That's
he's injured.
Well, again, this is a contract not about what you've done, although he's done a fair bit. It's more about what we're hoping you're going to do, and that's why we need you here, right? So, there's two ways you get paid as a player today. It used to be, it seems like forever now, that you win a Stanley Cup, you're central to winning that Stanley Cup, and all of a sudden your financial reward jumps, right? And then it gets difficult for your team to compete with the rest of the teams because of that. That extension of money, that more amount of money that you get makes it hard for the team to fill a roster. What we got here is a situation, and we have it elsewhere too, where these highest paid players are not players who've won cups. They're getting these contracts strictly based on potential. And potential is itself a word that's self-described perfectly. Potential is not a guarantee. Potential is potential. It's in the word that, there's no guarantee that the guy's going to live up to the standard you require to pay that kind of money. And for me, it's a contract. I don't like it. I don't like it mathematically, again, not personally, just mathematically. My problem with the core four was never the players. It was math and the inability of the Leaf organization to convince them that they'll be making a lot of money in the future. Why not grab some honors first and team honors at the top of the list? It didn't work. Shanahan couldn't convince the core four. We know he said it. I remember him saying that, while I was in Detroit, we all took a little bit less because we knew if we did, the team would be able to bring in more players, and that's what led us to win. But those weren't cap days. Those players did it because they wanted to do it, because they didn't feel the need to make a ridiculous amount of money more than the other player in the room, which I think was the motivation more than trying to stay under the cap, because there was no cap.
Yeah, I know. It just seems to me that it was, and this is going to make me sound old, but it was far less mercenary.
I'm gonna make you sound even younger. It's it is now far more about me than it is we. That's
fair.
That's the issue, because it's okay, and they've been given permission by the body that runs them, the CFLPA. Sorry, the NHLPA. Going into the CFL here, the NHLPA wants players to make their contracts as big as possible, because they live in a world where they say, if the price goes up for player A, B, C, and D now can ask for more money, which is understandable, which isn't really about we. It's about individuals helping it to become about the we. So the bottom line is the we, but at the beginning, it's, what an individual gets. The big news around the Leaf camp, Aaron, did you hear what it is?
No, I might have missed this little tidbit. What you got, Frank?
Me neither. I haven't heard anything around it.
Oh, okay.
That's news in itself. No news coming out of Maple Leaf situation. Thanks for doing this, Aaron. It was a lot of fun.
Which means we're getting a fire hose on Friday. You know that, right?
Oh, don't even start. You're probably right, because it seems the lull before the storm. There's all these little quips by people on the internet talking about there's a big move in the pipeline. There's Leafs are going to go crazy here with a move, and they could very well do it, or they might not. And that's where we live, following the Leafs. Any news is big news. And right now, the fact that there's nothing really to talk about tells you how little, is going on in the Leaf world. Of course, we still have the simmering Riley situation, the simmering Nyes situation. What we haven't heard yet is a confirmation that Domi won't be playing for a while, so that the cap can be massaged, with his absence, less pressure to do some things that they would need to do if his contract was part of the formula arriving at the cap height that they need to be below. So it's interesting in that sense, but we haven't gotten any news. And I really think that the big news for the Leafs is health. The players that were unhealthy last year, are they healthy this year? Domi's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other interesting quandaries. And we talked about young defensemen with the Leafs. If Tanev isn't healthy, the question you raised is irrelevant at this point, because the chain of command, if you will change. It's not like you can move Villeneuve into Tanev's position. It's going to be somebody else that's in the lineup now that's going to be put in the Tanev position, and Villeneuve is going to be in the sixth defenseman or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation all over again. I am not looking forward to a fire hose of news. I really am not, but I have a feeling we're going to get it.
Well, if it's a fire hose that says Riley's been traded, and my feelings about a Riley trade. A Riley trade, to me, a good one would be just him leaving and taking the cap space with him. That, to me, would be a positive at this point. They don't need an asset for him. They really don't. And if they're going to give up an asset to get rid of the money, I'd be surprised, because Chayka's not a guy. One thing he's established, Aaron, and I think it's important, he's established that he goes for assets, doesn't give up assets. So I would find it hard to believe that he would. That's probably what's holding up the deal. Anyway, I think we've gone a little bit over. And having said that, thanks for doing this. He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. And enjoy this week. It should be an interesting one. Sorry about taking so